Good evening, everyone. This isn't an easy conversation, not for me and probably not for you, but it's necessary. Because sometimes the harm we carry comes wearing the face of someone we once trusted. Sometimes it's not strangers who bring darkness into our lives, it's friends, it's family, it's people who were supposed to protect us, not poison us. And that's hard to admit. In the beginning, it felt like connection. You opened up to them, maybe during a late night conversation, maybe in a moment of raw pain when you needed someone to just listen. You shared your past wounds, your secrets, your fears. You trusted that your story was safe in their hands. But later, they used it against you. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it came as a subtle jab in front of others, a casual reminder of something deeply personal dropped at the worst moment. Sometimes it came during conflict, when they twisted your story to discredit you, mock you, or gain the upper hand. And sometimes it wasn't what they said, it was the look, the smirk, the silence laced with smugness, as if saying, I know where you bleed. And that's the moment you realize your vulnerability was never honored, it was collected like ammunition. This kind of betrayal cuts deep, especially when it comes from a friend or family member. It's the emotional equivalent of inviting someone into your home only for them to leave the door open for harm to walk in. And yet we often excuse it. We tell ourselves they were just angry or joking or didn't mean it, but intention doesn't erase the impact. Someone who truly loves you will hold your vulnerability with reverence, not use it as leverage. Because here's the truth, what you share in courage deserves to be met with care. Your pain is not a punchline. Your story is not a strategy for someone else's emotional control. And if a person consistently turns your openness into a source of shame, silence, or power imbalance, they are showing you that they cannot be trusted with your heart. Real love listens. It protects. It gently holds the pieces of you that are still healing and never, ever uses them as a blade. You know the feeling. It's that quiet tension in your chest before you see them. That internal checklist you run through. Did I say something wrong last time? Will they be in a good mood today? Should I bring this up or just let it go? You become the emotional referee in every interaction. Careful, calculated, overly accommodating. You rehearse your words before speaking, censor your truth to avoid conflict, and sometimes you just stay silent altogether, not because you're okay, but because you're tired of being misunderstood, or worse, punished. This is what it means to walk on eggshells. And here's the heartbreaking part. Sometimes this becomes so normal you don't even notice it anymore. It feels like just how things are. You confuse fear with respect, anxiety with love, and you tell yourself you're keeping the peace when really you're abandoning your own. When you're around someone who is emotionally volatile or manipulative, your nervous system stays in survival mode. You're constantly scanning for signs in their tone, their posture, their silence. You feel like you're responsible for managing them, for holding everything together so things don't explode. That is not love. That is emotional captivity. Friends or family who operate like this are not difficult. They're dangerous to your inner world. Their presence demands that you shrink, self-abandon, and suppress yourself. And no relationship is worth that cost. In safe relationships, you can exhale. You can speak without fear of retaliation. You can be imperfect, honest, even emotional, without worrying that your truth will become a trigger for punishment. People who truly care for you don't need to be feared. They don't require you to tiptoe around their moods to keep the connection alive. They create room for your whole self to show up, not just the version of you that makes them comfortable. So if you find yourself constantly anxious around someone, unsure of how they'll respond or who they'll be that day, that's not just a bad dynamic. That's your soul asking for safety. And you have every right to answer that call. At first glance, it seems like concern, maybe even love. They say things like, I just want what's best for you, or you used to be so much more available. But underneath the surface, their words are loaded, designed not to express love, but to control your choices. This is guilt, not the healthy kind that invites reflection, but the toxic kind that manipulates through obligation and emotional debt. They remind you of all they've done for you, but not with pride, with pressure, as if their acts of kindness were contracts you unknowingly signed, as if your entire identity is now tied to making sure they feel validated, needed, and in control. You say no, and they act wounded. You set a boundary, and suddenly you're the selfish one. You make a choice for your well-being, and they take it personally, as if your growth is a betrayal. They don't ask you to show up, they expect it. They don't celebrate your independence, they resent it. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to comply. You start saying yes to things you dread. You answer calls you don't want to take. You show up emotionally when you're empty because the guilt weighs more than your truth. This is not love. This is control with a smile on its face. Healthy love doesn't trap you in cycles of shame. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't manipulate your sense of loyalty just to avoid being held accountable or left behind. Guilt-based love demands sacrifice without nourishment. It thrives on fear. Fear of disappointing them, fear of conflict, fear of being labeled ungrateful or cold. But here's what no one tells you. You do not owe anyone unlimited access to your energy just because they share your blood or memories. Real relationships breathe. They allow room for boundaries. They don't dissolve at the first sign of individuality. And most importantly, they don't twist your compassion into a leash to keep you emotionally tethered. So if someone in your life constantly makes you feel bad for taking care of yourself or demands your presence through passive aggression or martyrdom, it's time to ask, is this love or is this control disguised as closeness? Let go of the guilt. You are allowed to choose freedom. They smile when you share your dreams. They nod in agreement when you talk about your healing. They say all the right things. I'm so proud of you. You deserve this. You've come so far. But deep down, something doesn't feel right. It's subtle. You can't always name it. But their energy doesn't match their words. They mirror support on the surface, but behind closed doors, they chip away at your confidence with tiny cuts. A sarcastic comment here, a doubtful question there, a raised eyebrow when you talk about your next step. They plant little seeds of insecurity, not overtly, but with just enough weight to make you second guess yourself. They may discourage you in ways that feel like advice. Are you sure that's the right move? I just don't want to see you get hurt. You know how competitive that field is, right? Or they celebrate your success publicly, but privately act distant, dismissive, or indifferent. There's no real joy in their congratulations. There's no genuine presence in their praise, because deep down, your growth threatens the version of you they were comfortable with, the version that needed them, stayed small, and didn't outgrow the roles they created. This is what emotional sabotage looks like. Not loud, not obvious, but quiet and consistent. And because they technically support you, you hesitate to call it out. You gaslight yourself. Maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe I'm imagining it. But here's the truth. Energy doesn't lie. You feel it when someone is genuinely rooting for you. There's light in their eyes, there's grounded encouragement, there's warmth in the way they hold your wins. You also feel it when someone is clapping with resentment in their heart. People who secretly sabotage you often feel entitled to your old self. Your healing reminds them of their stagnancy. Your boundaries threaten their control. Your success shines a light on everything they've suppressed in themselves. So instead of celebrating you, they shrink you, not through confrontation, but through subtle erosion. You are not imagining it. And you don't need to wait for louder betrayal to trust your instincts. True support doesn't feel confusing. It doesn't create self-doubt. It doesn't need to be interpreted. If you constantly feel emotionally unsettled around someone who claims to support you, listen to your body. Observe the consistency of their energy, not the charm of their words. You deserve to be surrounded by people who are not only clapping for you, but who also mean it. You come to them calmly, maybe even nervously, hoping for a conversation, not a confrontation. You want to express how something they said or did made you feel hurt, dismissed, or unseen. You're not trying to attack them. You're simply looking for understanding, maybe even a little accountability. But instead of reflection, you get deflection. Suddenly, you're no longer talking about your pain, you're defending it. They twist the conversation until you're the one explaining yourself, apologizing, backtracking. Somehow, it all becomes about how you brought it up, not what you brought up. This is what flipping the script looks like, a refusal to take ownership disguised as self-defense. They might say things like, "You're too sensitive. Why are you always making me the bad guy?" I didn't mean it like that, but of course you twist my words. And they hijack the moment. Suddenly you're the aggressor and they're the victim. And instead of receiving your truth, they use it as a spotlight to center themselves and escape responsibility. The worst part, you leave the conversation more confused than when you started. You feel like your emotions are invalid, your perspective is flawed, and your voice doesn't matter. And over time, this pattern teaches you a dangerous lesson. Don't speak up, it only makes things worse. People who refuse to apologize aren't incapable of saying, "I'm sorry." They're unwilling to see themselves as someone who could cause harm. Their ego can't handle the weight of accountability, so they shift it to you. But here's the truth, accountability is not an attack, it's a bridge, one that emotionally healthy people are willing to walk. A genuine apology doesn't just say, "I'm sorry." It says, "I see you, I hear you, I want to repair this." Or when someone flips the script every time they're called in, they're telling you loud and clear that their comfort matters more than your truth. This is emotional immaturity, and in many families and friendships, it's generational. But just because it's familiar doesn't make it safe. You are allowed to ask for conversations that heal, not confuse. You are allowed to speak your truth without being shamed into silence. And you are allowed to walk away from people who only listen to be right, not to understand. If someone refuses to take accountability over and over again, believe them. That is not miscommunication, that is emotional manipulation dressed in self-defense. Some people don't enter your life to grow with you, they enter to feed off you, not in the obvious way that villains do in stories, but in quiet, consistent ways that leave you emotionally and spiritually empty. At first, they seem like they just need help. They vent a lot. They need your advice, your time, your attention. You offer it willingly from a place of compassion. But over time, you start to notice a pattern. The relationship only moves in one direction. You pour. They receive. You show up. They expect. You give. They take and take and take. You leave conversations feeling heavier than you walked in. Your joy feels dimmer. Your clarity feels muddled. Your energy feels drained. This is spiritual depletion. The cost of being emotionally entangled with someone who doesn't pour anything back into you. They might not insult you, they might not yell, but their presence is still exhausting, not because they're demanding, but because they're energetically consuming. They bring drama to every room, crisis to every call, competition to every achievement, even your good news somehow turns into their struggle. It's not a celebration, it's a comparison. It's not a conversation, it's a monologue. You find yourself being their therapist, their cheerleader, their emotional punching bag, but never their equal. And when you try to pull back, when you start creating boundaries or protecting your space, they either get offended, you're distant lately, play the victim, I guess you don't care anymore, or guilt trip you into staying emotionally available for them, even when it's killing your peace. Here's the hard truth. Not everyone who says they love you knows how to honor your energy. And some people, especially in families or long-term friendships, only know how to feel powerful when someone else feels responsible for fixing their chaos. You are not their emotional generator. You are not their savior. You are not their crutch or their dumping ground or their proof of worth. You are a soul, not a sponge, and love should not require you to be spiritually dehydrated to stay connected. So ask yourself, do I feel lighter after spending time with this person? Or do I feel like I need a nap, a prayer, or a deep detox? Emotionally safe relationships don't leave you wondering if your light is too bright. They don't demand your healing while refusing to do their own. You are allowed to guard your spirit. You are allowed to choose peace over proximity. And you are allowed to leave behind people who only feel alive when you feel exhausted. That's not selfish, that's sacred. Here's what I want you to remember. Not everyone who claims to love you knows how to treat you with love. Not everyone who shares your bloodline or your memories is meant to continue walking with you. And while that realization is painful, it's also liberating. Because this isn't about hating anyone. This is about healing you. Spotting the demons in others isn't about judging them. It's about recognizing the energy that steals your peace, distorts your truth, and makes you question your worth. It's about calling out manipulation, not because you want revenge, but because you want freedom. The deepest kind of courage is not confrontation, it's clarity. Clarity that says, I can love you and still protect myself from you. I can grieve what we had and still release what no longer serves me. I can forgive without inviting your chaos back into my life. You do not have to carry toxic connections just because they're long-standing. You are not responsible for fixing someone who refuses to see the harm they cause. And you are allowed, fully, unapologetically allowed to choose healing, even if it means walking alone for a while. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of your self-honoring chapter. Let today be the day you stop betraying yourself just to keep the peace with others. Let today be the day you say yes to the life, the love, and the light you were always worthy of. You've seen enough. You've tolerated enough.